our honorable panelists on the stage. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Žygimantas Vaičiūnas, the Minister of Energy, Mr. Giles Dixon, CEO of Wind Europe, Mrs. Inga Žilienė, Chair of the Board of the National Energy Regulatory Council, Mr. Virginijus Poderys, Chairman of the Parliamentary Energy Commission, and Mr. Daivis Virbickas, the Chief Executive Officer of our TSO, Litgrid. Please. First of all, thank you very much for coming here and participating in this discussion. Dear Mrs. Inga Žilienė, let me start with you. Yes. Well, the new support model and the new auction rules were prepared under your supervision. There was a lot of doubt when the maximum premium was announced. And now you have these astonishing results with zero bid. And one could say that your strategy and your formulas proved right. Do you think that the market is mature enough to go without support? Or do you see other reasons for those zero bids? Could this signal that there is something wrong with this new support model and brings some threats to the next round?
So good morning, everybody.
Is it on? Yeah. Is it on? It's on.
So good morning, everybody. Dear guests and delighted panelists as well. It's a great pleasure to attend this very important meeting as well, and thanks organizers for inviting to this great event as well. So the Minister presented all the figures about the auction, so I do not want to repeat those figures and the results as well, but I would say that this time we had a quite different auction than previous auction. Because it was a technology-neutral auction, and as well it was more close to the market conditions. What it means, and all Europe now are talking that actually auctions and investments must be made according to the price signals, of the market. So that was very important. And for us as regulators, of course we were a little bit stressed because it was a trial auction for us as well, calculating the price premium, calculating the reference price and the maximum price. So the results actually, they were surprising for us as well as for market and for the ministry as well, I hope so. Because during the public discussions and during the public hearings, we got a lot of complaints and we had a huge discussion what size should be about the price premium. And we got the complaints from the market players that it's too low according to the current situations in the market. So 3 bidders which provided 0 bids, it was a surprise for us. So how to treat those results? There might be 2 reasons why 0 bids were provided. First of all, what it came to mind for us and for my colleagues that it would be an advantage for the developers just to have priority dispatching and to be guaranteed to get access to the grid as a priority. So I suppose that the participants of auctions, they have a forward-looking approach. When you are the first one, you are able to get the better conditions to be installed into the grid and to mature, it's very difficult to say. Actually, there is space where to grow up for the wind, for the solar as well, for different technologies. But of course, now we are thinking about the negative bids as well. If it's a case for the auction participants, we had discussions in our regulatory authority as well to allow or to not allow to provide negative bids. So I suppose we will have a discussion with the market players and the minister as well concerning that case. From my personal view, I'm not sure if a negative bids is some kind of support scheme. It might be some different kind of market or different design of the market. So now we have a short-term task to recalculate the price premium, to recalculate the maximum price and the reference price according to the current data. So I suppose that nowadays I do not have a clear answer why bidders provided zero bids. Only one answer is to get the better conditions to be connected to the grid and to have some priority in terms of dispatching. But we will have a very interesting discussions in a short time, as the next auction is foreseen in May for 0.7 terawatt hours.
Well, thank you for that. Dear Davis, Litgrid announced a map of available grid capacity before the auction. So would you agree that the zero bids came in because the producers were competing for not for the premium, so to say, but for the limited grid connection?
So the zero bid means either we should confirm that wind technology is getting cheaper and cheaper, or bidders expect high market price. I believe in the first one, but nobody knows. I hope the market price will be low and technology is getting more and more effective, and you will have good price, green portfolio, and everybody will be happy. From grid perspective, from technology point of view, everything it's possible. Everything is doable. Of course, we need some time, we need some investments to extend the grid. But in Lithuanian situation particularly, due to historical reason, grid is quite strong. I'm talking about the whole grid in the region. Of course, in some specific points, it might be necessary some significant improvements to build substation, for instance. But grid by itself, it's very strong because in Soviet Union, it was built to serve 3 times bigger electricity demands than we have now. And the limiting factor is its capability to balance intermittency, to keep frequency in certain levels. By making synchronization, by connecting to the continental Europe, we have to make sure that frequency and system balance is maintained according to European rules. And due to the fact that in Lithuania, 80 years already, almost 80 years, let's say 75 plus years, frequency was kept by Moscow, so nobody did this in Lithuania for the last 75 years, so we don't have this experience. We try to get this experience from our European colleagues, and that's why we cooperate with them, we consult with them. Is it possible to keep balance in certain limits or not? And from technology point of view, everything is doable. Of course, we need time, we need investments, but having in mind that Europe is already chosen this green direction, that's obvious for Litgrid as a tier, so that we have to do our best to make this happen.
Thank you. Giles, so what does the industry think of those zero bids or negative bids, as the chairman said?
Thank you, Aistis. As I suggested earlier, with zero bids, there is the risk that the total project development costs will end up being higher than they might otherwise have been because the capital costs will be much higher than they would be if you had that perspective of stable revenues for the first 15 years of the project. Let's wait and see exactly how much it costs to finance these projects. If Lithuania or any other country were to move to negative bids, clearly the capital costs would be higher still. There is no country in Europe or anywhere in the world yet that has done negative bids for wind energy. There is great nervousness among the wind industry about the prospect of some governments being tempted to go down this route. We understand the temptation, and we understand governments compare wind auctions to telecoms auctions. When we were upgrading from 2G to 3G and 3G to 4G, governments made a lot of money out of those auctions. We know that. And what was the impact on the European telecoms industry? They were saddled with huge debts because of how much money they had to pay to win those auctions. Comparing wind with telecoms is also quite a challenging thing to do. Here we are in the wind industry trying to deliver a public policy goal. Our climate and energy targets, the European Green Deal, the most important priority of the new European Commission. And negative bidding basically says, well, we the governments are actually asking you to pay to have the privilege of helping us deliver this wonderful public policy goal. There's something not quite right there. I won't say any more, other than don't go there. You understand? Could I respond? No, I will come back later on what has been said on grid issues, perhaps.
Please, Chairman, you wanted to comment on that?
So my comment was quite provocative in order to get answer from you. If negative bids is a case for industry, so thank you for answering that question. So now it's quite clear for us so how to proceed further. So thanks a lot.
All right. We will have a session devoted for the auctions right after this. So unless Mr. Federici, you want to add something to that concerning the zero bids, or otherwise we move on to that question.
I'm afraid to interrupt because just before the session at the coffee, we discussed whether this was to amend the law on renewables to let regulator to go in minus area. I'm listening.
Now you'll be more cautious. Minister, please.
Just as you're talking about the factors for this first review for the zero, as a minister I always have to be positive, not a negative one. so the thing is quite simple in our market. What we have concerning the electricity price increase in several years. So the first fact, the second fact was that of course the market was quite hungry because the last auction was in 2015 and this was the first auction with the new system. So that's why this is also the second point counts for why this deal was here. The third, of course, the technology itself, it's going to be cheaper and cheaper, and this is cheaper, so this is more efficient thing. And the last but not the least, looking for the future, yes, this is really important to understand the current momentum. And for us, for Lithuania, for the Baltic states, it's really wise to use the momentum. But I would like to say very clearly, we are talking about several stakeholders. We are talking about the banks, about the lending possibilities, about the interest rates. We are talking about the developers' interest. We are talking about the mayors of municipalities to attract and to have the taxes. And we are talking about the municipality, society itself. The key question is like this, that after this results with the zero bids, it's very clear answer for us to go forward and to talk even with the municipalities that this system should be more flexible, should be more friendly for the developers, because consumers will not pay from their pockets. So that's the reason, and this is one of the key arguments, because we have several factors towards this development. So I'm frank and I'm really positive on this, that this zero bits was a really good argument for the society that we are not overpaying for the development of communities.
Yes, absolutely. Well, keep the microphone, please. So, dear Minister, it's been more than 3 years since you are in the office, and we have many good things done. We have the National Energy Strategy in place. We have the renewable targets approved. We have auction schedule approved. We have offshore study released. First auction finished with these results. Not to mention other achievements that you've done regarding small generation, prosumers, those remote power plants, and synchronization process going on. What else do you think have to be done to make sure that we continue in this direction? What are your priorities for the last year in the office? I have to remind the audience that we have the elections coming in October, the parliamentary elections. And don't get me wrong, we want you to stay. But the elections are usually unpredictable. So what are your priorities for the last year?
Thank you for the question, and thank you for mentioning these positive things which we are really capable to achieve. But of course, this is a common and joint work, not only of the minister, not only of the government, but also the regulator of the parliament. I'm really thankful for the parliament position that always these changes on the renewables was really met in a good manner. And of course, we had always discussion about, even though there were some improvements in the parliament discussion. And this is really the results that we have after this joint work. And looking forward for this year, till the end of the year, because the government changes the middle of December. The plans is, as I said, the first thing is to ensure a really clear path for the development of the offshore wind. That's our view. That so this was also mentioning about to create a new system. Here today we are talking about the onshore framework. The next we have to be quite fast. The time is running, but to have very clear not only the inclusion of these numbers in the National Energy and Climate Plan, this was included in the current version, but also to have very clear framework that it should be attractive. And the vision is very clear. We have, of course, there are some discussions, ideas about the development of the regional approach. Yes, we are in support of this, but sometimes probably it is better to move as fast as possible because we see the need and the demand to have the offshore wind. And the reasons are objective. Levelized cost of energy is the lowest, so this is natural move. On the other fields, I should say that always it is the way how to improve the system in a positive level. I mentioned that the PPAs, and one of the things which we are thinking, this is quite a soft thing, but from the government perspective it would be good and it would be nice that the government sector would have the power purchase on the green energy. This could be done in a quite a simple way because we are making the decentralization of the state ownership, and of course this would be one of the things and clear strategy that the state and the municipalities are moving forward to buy only green energy.
Oh, that's very nice. Well, let's switch to the parliament now. Mr. Virgilius, the National Energy Strategy was adopted in 2018. 103 out of 104 parliamentarians present voted in favor, just one sustained. This is a very similar vote to the Lithuanian parliament voted for independence in the 1990s when it was unanimous with one sustained. Do you think we can be sure that the strategy will be continued to be adopted after the parliamentary elections in autumn?
Sorry,
Do you think that the strategy will be continued to be adopted afterwards, after the parliamentary elections, after the new government, after the new ruling party comes in?
Yeah, the energy issues are very high on political agenda in Lithuania, as we all know. And I think a few years ago we reached the tipping point when the skeptics decreased to zero in Lithuania, because say 10 years ago or so, the green energy, wind was we were in doubt. Even 10 years ago, as head of electricity system operator, I was somehow in doubt, suspicious whether they provide to stability, whether or not. But now, as you see, Dairis is quite happy with the wind. And yes, so both in parliament and system operator companies, I think we reached tipping point, and now we are believers, maybe lovers of wind energy. But still, please do not overlook some problems like grid stability while decoupling from a Russian system. That's what I sometimes miss in green conferences, these talks or discussions on stability, while leading big system, a Russian system. And I would like to discuss with the experts on batteries, whether wind should be coupled with batteries, sun with batteries, maybe other smart devices like compensators, synchronous compensators, I think they call so. But about implementation of strategy, yes, absolutely sure. But we should stick to strategy, but let's be clear, we don't know what new technologies and developments are around the next corner. So be open-minded still.
Thank you for this. Sure.
Just shortly about the continuity of the strategy, because Mr. Padarys referred to the Commission referred to the things that we are talking about, the very clear targets and the questions about the measures, how to achieve it, to be quite flexible. And we have to be smart enough not to fix the things now, because there will be some cost efficiency in the future, maybe better, more friendly technology, because the world is developing and developing even in a bigger pace than we expected. But I would like to refer to the National Energy and Climate Plan, which was really important, and in all the energy councils, I was one of the biggest supporters, together with some other ministers, that this is a need and necessity to have this framework. This is governance approach, and that this should be supervised by the European Commission. And this is answer concerning the future. Even after elections, not depending on the government, National Energy and Climate Plan is the safeguard for us that we have to keep, to stick to the targets. This is safe, and this is very important, and that's how the European Union should develop. Because everybody understands that we are dependent on the political cycles. And this is not only in Lithuania, this is in all Europe. And this National Energy and Climate Plans, this is the best stabilization. And this is the best guarantee that, of course, this is the first move that after 2021, it will be the supervision of the European Commission. So on that, I'm sure I'm quite happy.
Thanks God we have European Union. Okay, well, let's move on. Dairis, you mentioned synchronization process. So how to make sure that we successfully continue the synchronization process with the continental Europe, and at the same time do not jeopardize the growth of renewable. Does the grid have a strategy how to combine these two processes, developments?
It's not only about Litgrid strategy, it's about regional, about continental strategy, because system balance, system frequencies, it's a common issue. So joint effort has to be made to keep frequency. That's why we always keeping this issue into agenda. We are consulting, we are discussing with our neighbors, especially in continental Europe. So far, we have made assessments that if we would add 250 megawatts, it flies. That's okay. We have sufficient amount of reserves in region. I mean, if we would like to have more, another iteration has to be made to prove to our colleagues in the region that that's fine, that's great, it's doable, we can keep balance, we can wait on frequency, and everything is about technology. If we would have flexible generators, not forecast-able generators, but plan-able generators, we can keep sufficient reserve, no problem. If we will have sufficient amount of batteries, another kind of storages, for instance, like we do have pump storage in Lithuania, the huge battery in Kruonis, less than 100 kilometers far away from Vilnius. So everything is doable technologically. From organizational point of view, we believe very much in limited into capacity auction, which is on the track right now. As far as I know, the legislation package is ready for Parliament, not approved yet, but it's there. So having these issues done, technology, legislation, everything is made on time, dialogue in region, so it's doable.
All right. Another question for you, please. As we heard from the minister, Lithuania is declaring that we're going to have 700 megawatts offshore by the end of the decade. Can you please tell us a bit on the next steps that TSO is taking to implementing this goal?
You mean TSO going to build 700 megawatts of offshore? No.
No, I mean in terms of cables, substation.
It's a very good question. In Europe, we have different examples. For instance, Great Britain, an island. Yes, you know just more about it, but it's surrounded by sea because it's an island. A lot of offshore is running, a lot of capabilities, a lot of opportunities. And as far as I know, UK, they have even operator for offshore grid, if I'm not mistaken. For instance, in other European countries, there is up to wind developer to build offshore grid and to connect to the grid in a in land point. It's different alternatives, but from Lithuanian perspective, wind developer, he's or she, they are more motivated to develop wind as quick as possible, as in the most effective way. They are more flexible to get competences on offshore grid. And in Lithuania, this is my understanding, it's not decided yet, but the best way would be for Litgrid, for TSO to prepare point onshore, and for wind developer to develop wind farm and to develop appropriate offshore grid. From the map Minister has shown, it's not a long distance. We talk about, I don't know, 50 kilometers, something like that. It's not a huge distance, not a huge grid. And by constructing Harmony Link, another interconnection between Lithuania and Poland, we already will prepare place ready to connect offshore grids, the same substation as connecting point for Harmony Link. So we will do what is in our hands to prepare this landing point for offshore wind.
All right. Giles, do you have any practice, good examples of offshore connecting to the onshore in other countries?
Yes. It's very good, Darius, to hear what you have just said. The offshore wind farm developers are perfectly happy to take on the responsibility for the grid connection, for developing, building, even owning the grid connection from the offshore wind farm to the landing point. And it's very good to hear what you're saying about the coordination of the landing points for the offshore wind farms and the Harmony interconnector. That makes perfect sense. That is the model, as you say, in the United Kingdom. It is also the model that Denmark has now moved to. Denmark used to have a model, which is still the model in Germany, the Netherlands and Belgium, where the transmission system operator is responsible for the grid connection from the offshore wind farm to the coast. The operator has no responsibility and the government pays a fixed amount. I think in the Netherlands it's 14 euros per megawatt hour for building and operating that grid connection. The offshore wind industry can live with that model as well, but we have a preference for the model that you have described. In terms of offshore grids and onshore grids, our experience so far has been that any delays that we've experienced in connecting offshore wind farms to the grids in any country have actually been more to do with the reinforcing of the onshore grid than with the development of the offshore grid connection. In Belgium at the moment, Belgium is planning to more than double its offshore wind by 2030. The TSO Elia needs to build new transmission lines. They can do that on time with the government's timetable, which is roughly 2025, but they are struggling to reinforce the onshore grid connection on time.
Thank you for this, Giles. Before I ask the next question to the Minister and Mrs. Inga, I would like the audience to think of the questions, so we will have 5 minutes for that as well. So, Minister, if zero bits will be the new normal, so PPAs will become super important issue. What does the ministry intend to do on promoting PPAs?
That's for sure, that's the case. So that's why the ministry prepared, this is approved by the government, now it's the parliament, that the PPAs should be as much as easier to go forward. So the first thing is that, as I said before, it would be no necessity to have a separate license. Just the developer of the power plant would have the possibility to sell electricity. So this is one thing. Another thing, of course, we are delighted, we are prepared to grab the best experience of Europe on the development of the most comfortable and the most efficient system. So in the case, in Lithuania we have also quite a big industry which is really energy intensive, and so this is the market for them to have the PPAs. And last but not the least, Lithuania will be now the country which is about 14 countries in the EU which already have PPAs and 14 not having PPAs. Of course, the number of the EU countries will change quite soon, but that will be the case that really we are really flexible to grab the best experience, and I think that Giles also could help us the best experience from Europe, how to make this system the most profitable. Not only talking about the regulatory things on the law level, but also from the government. And of course, the last but not the least is advertising and talking to the big industry, which would be really to see that this is a good price fixing mechanism for the future.
Yes, exactly. And if I may say my own point of view of our association uniting developers and manufacturers, that is if the market is moving towards the subsidy-free world. So we have to also focus not only on incentivizing the producer, but also to switch our attention to the consumer, to the off-taker, so that he would be interested, so he would be somehow driven to buy clean, green electricity. And this is very important for the future, for the industry as well, if they want to stay competitive. This is Inga. What is your thoughts on PPAs in the future and the whole electricity market? How do you see it developing in the future?
So thank you very much for the question. Actually, we as a regulator very welcome the initiatives which has been made by the ministry concerning the introduction of PPAs and introduction of local energy communities, introduction of aggregators and other market players as well, enabling the end user to be active in the energy market. So talking about PPAs, I would like to say about two segments. If there is industry, I think it's a case, and it's a case of very short-term perspective that they will be active so when the law is adopted. But when it comes to end users, inhabitants, we as a regulator very much encourage deregulation of the prices. And my opinion is that the regulation of the prices would encourage to take PPAs and to have a green energy as well. So we will see how the draft law will be finalized in the parliament. Of course, so there are some threats about the regulation of the prices as well. There are threats that maybe the prices will be increased and etc. But I think that the users will have a huge possibilities to be active end users and to have a green electricity and to sign a PPAs as well with some wind farms or other solar farms as well. So talking about the future of energy market, I would like to mention two dimensions. It's internal market, where we as the regulators have a huge discussions as well, how to implement aggregators, local energy consumers as well, and as well how to treat the bundled products in energy sector and charging of electrical vehicles, telecom services, and energy services are connected into one offer, so how to treat those ones. And then, of course, we're waiting very much for the regulation as well. There are some tasks for regulator as well, ensuring the competitive market and ensuring the possibilities for end users to get a fair price and to get a fair contracts as well from independent energy suppliers. But as well, we as the regulators have a quite huge tasks on cross-border issues. And here I would like to mention some of the tasks. One is a 70% of capacities rule, where TSOs they are obliged to allocate 70% of capacities on interconnectors for commercial flows for trading. So that's very important for youths as well, for wind farms as well, in order that enabling that electricity flow in the whole Europe and to have enough capacities for cross-border. So nowadays the situation is that in Lithuania now the calculations are checked by Acer. So if Lithuania meets those criteria or no, so we will see the debates. But those debates they are going on technical level. As well, I would like to mention another project. It's the XBIT project. It's a EU-wide electricity trading platform. So it will enable as well to trade electricity via Europe, across Europe, having intraday products. So that's very important, I would say, for wind farms as well to have renewable sector. Another one, of course, project is synchronization, but it's more, I would say, for the Eastern Europe. It's for countries, Poland, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia, but as well it's very important for the market to have the security of supply of the market, so that's another one dimension. And finalizing my answer, I would like to say that all regulators now we are talking about the integration of renewables, but the main task is Green Deal and decarbonization at least cost. So that's very important to ensure that principle. We can, of course, to have very nice, grid system. We are able to have a DSO as well, very huge network, but as well we are looking for the solutions how to ensure efficiency in the market, how to ensure that proportional costs are included into the transmission system tariffs and DSO tariffs. As well, in the future, I would like to mention the transitional period until 2050, and here is a very huge role of green gases. So, power to gas is one topic which is as well a hot topic on agenda, and how to ensure that transitional period, how to couple the different sectors, gas sector and the electricity sector. So here are 4 or 5 topics which are now hot topics, and we are dealing with the regulators on that issue on European platform.
I see. Thank you very much for that. Any questions from the audience? Yes, please, can we get the microphone? Thank you.
Hello, this is Jonas Keusel from the German Ministry of Economic Affairs and Energy, and I'm responsible for EU electricity markets and renewables. So let me first of all congratulate you to this conference and to all the stakeholders who are here, and also to ambitious plans and all the goals you've already achieved. It's very impressive. So, and I'm very impressed also by the clear words the minister is using and the clear goals which are set up, which is not everywhere common in Europe, I'd like to say. My question is, actually yesterday I was in Brussels, and the EU Commission is developing like an offshore strategy for the whole of Europe. And in the North Sea Cooperation, it's another format of 10 member states in the North Sea. There's thoughts about developing a regulatory framework, or at least cornerstones for a regulatory framework for common offshore projects. So if there's like a lot of wind parks in some area, then it could make sense to connect this wind park like not only to one country or to other countries, or like to build interconnectors which include wind parks. So like there will be like several countries involved, and this will be like one of the issues the German EU presidency in the second half of 2020 will tackle. In fact, so my question to you is if there's like any plans of Lithuania doing such projects with neighboring member states.
Thank you for the question. Does anyone want to take that?
Thank you for the question, and I would like to echo one of the main criteria to go or not to go for this regional cooperation. The main criteria is added value for the developers, for the industry, and for the consumers. And here, of course, we have to learn a lot of good things for the North Sea initiative, for the onshore development. And of course, to learn the things which was really positive. And here we have to state very clear that to some extent we have some geographical limitations, because the Lithuanian part is really near to the coast, just 20-30 kilometers. For Latvia, Estonia, of course, this is in the bay. There are more technical possibilities to develop, but presumably talking about the framework itself. We have some technical exchanges already now, talking between the ministries, also using BEMIP format, Baltic Energy Market Interconnection Plan, exchanging the views how this regional cooperation could make the added value. So in case we see, of course, we have to use this regional cooperation, and it could be, of course, one of the good stories for also for the Baltic states, as well as to see about the possibilities and the potential of our neighbor in the south, I mean Poland, because also Poland also has huge ambitious plans for development on the offshore. So always we are open to this, but the key question is to see the positive added value of this cooperation. So this regional cooperation has to be the mover of the projects, but not to create the issues or the problems for the development.
And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we still have the border with Latvia not demarcated or delimited.
But that's a long story. What we have from the recent meetings of the prime ministers between Lithuania and Latvia, this is the general agreement that we have to move forward. And to finalize this in as much as possible, as soon as possible.
Any other question? Okay, let's take one more and we'll have to finish this session.
Hello, Gediminas Loza, Media. I just made a very short calculation over this panel, and I took the numbers from JAWS, saying that the developers would save around 2.5% of financing costs if we were to move to a feed-in tariff or difference model, which we have in, let's say, in Poland or in the UK, and that would actually make 250 million euros over the 10-year lifetime or 12-year lifetime of those wind farms. That's the amount of money we could actually use today for doing something better. And the better could be, for example, taking the Tesla battery, which was used in Australia to balance the grid. We could actually build 200 megawatts of that. I think that's a very, very, how to say, subtle calculation that could be done and should be done to reconsider. Maybe we should actually move to a model where the developers or the operators of wind parks will be assured a fixed price for long term. That price will be lower than the market price of electricity, but that will still give an opportunity to finance the projects much cheaper. That amount of money could be used to build something that the grid needs. Batteries, renovation of cronies, or something else that would actually balance the grid. And in money terms, 250 million euros is there. We just need to find a way how to take it. What do you think? And that's the question for the ministry and for the parliament. Thank you.
That's a thought to be considered.
Let's start with experts. No, please. Yes, I like batteries issue very much. So what I missed in this conference, like session on batteries or other smart gadgets, or next year. Yeah. So, but I think the little bit is already you are tendering for new study, which is about everything, including batteries. Could you please comment a bit? I'm not in a position to...
From a technological point of view, sure I will share my thoughts. Actually, we just started last year, so a pilot project with a battery. It's not a big one, not 200 megawatts. It's 1 megawatt only. But aim of the project is to test technical capabilities to keep frequency. So-called synthetic inertia, for instance. Is battery able to do it? Is telecommunication grid ready to react fast enough to keep this frequency? Because it's not about battery just to build. It's not enough. You have to make sure the battery performs according to your needs, according to system needs. You need telecommunication grid to be involved as well. You need digitalization as a whole to be involved as well. So we have an aim to finalize this pilot project next year. This is our aim. This is not the only pilot project going on in Europe. According to our calculation, there are around 10 TSOs having something similar. Of course, megawatts may be different, but indeed the aim to test synthetic inertia and to test this battery able technically to keep balance in certain level, it's still a pilot. And even in Australia, as far as I know, it's kind of pilot yet. So technology is developing not only how to get wind tower cheaper, how to get wind more effective, but technology is developing also in another way as well. Maybe next year, as Mr. Lilly said, we will be more ready to discuss this issue. It would be great to have experts from Europe.
If I may ask you,
Yes.
I just address you. So now in Parliament we are considering law on generation capacity auctions, pending in autumn maybe, next time. So are there any chances for wind energy developers to bid in these auctions? Yeah, formally yes, but wind plus batteries, wind plus other smart gadgets, are there any chances? Because the future fleet of generation in Lithuania will be shaped also by these auctions. Yeah, I think we missed it.
Well, yeah.
In our discussion.
Just to add to the question, for instance, you build 100 megawatt of wind and you build a battery in the same time, and you can ensure some kind of stability. Not forecast able only, but plan able ability as well.
Yeah, the industry was really waiting for the auctions, for the capacity to kick in. So we are eagerly waiting for this, and we hope that they will be here this year, right? At the end of this year. So yes, there is a case for batteries what concerns the reserve capacity, but there is also a case for wind farms for the other system services. We've mentioned many times before that wind can provide system services for wind grid stability. Giles, you should agree with me on that.
Yes, wind farms can provide basic frequency control already. We cannot yet today provide the necessary level of inertia which you and the other TSOs need, Darius, but we are working on that, and it's very good to hear about your pilot project and what is happening with other TSOs, and we're working closely with ENSO-E on that. One observation on the intermittency of wind. We prefer to say variability, of course, but the capacity factors of both onshore and offshore wind turbines continue to increase. They have increased significantly since wind energy started. We started at sort of 20% capacity factors for onshore wind. In Poland, they are now building onshore wind farms that have 43% capacity factor. And that makes the system integration challenge much easier, of course, yeah, when our basic load levels are that much higher. Some countries in Europe are running capacity remuneration mechanisms, of course, that's well known, but some are also running auctions for fast frequency reserve. And this is proving very successful. The UK were the first to do this, other countries are now bringing them in. And in those instances, large battery units are able to bid in. Sometimes they are connected to wind farms. And this is something that the wind industry think is a very good way forward.
Derek, we definitely have to include batteries in the next note of emission.
Please.
Not only batteries,
Not only
kind of storage.
Yeah, storage. All right, so this was very, very interesting. Thank you all for coming and sharing your thoughts. Now we have to finish this panel, so give it a round of applause.